Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening. Just give me 1 second, and you can go ahead and introduce.
Yes. Yeah, well, Kemar gets that sorted. Good evening to one and all. Welcome to another edition of Alternate Views. Alternate Views. Back for another Thursday. Hope all is well. Hope everybody has had a pretty productive and safe week. And we're ready to get the ball rolling with this week's edition of Alternate Views.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
That's a song check to ensure that you hear me well.
We got you loud and clear.
Audience can hear me well. And let us get alternate views on the road this evening. So thank you very much, Nigel, for being here. Welcome to all alternate viewers to yet another Thursday as we discuss the hard topics on alternate views, offering the different perspectives. Um, I want to thank you, Nigel, for being here. Um, and I want to thank the audience, the loyal audience, for tuning in religiously every Thursday. I want to thank you. Um, I want you guys to like the program, to share the program, and to forward the program to all and sundry. You know, this is usually a great discussion. Um, and I want you guys to forward that link out because I have some very, very, very important information to share on here tonight. You'll be hearing directly from Mr. Watson Juke, Mr. Watson Juke, and we're going to be hearing from Joshua, Joshua Walcott, previously on the show. So we want to hear from them both as the general election in Tobago is happening, I think on the 28th, but not just Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago, right? The general election is happening, and we want to get direct feedback from Mr. Watson Juke and Mr. Joshua Walker, who's going to give us an analytical perspective, really. And we don't want to get into the cut and trust of the partisan side of the politics. They want to take a holistic and a global view, looking in from the outside, because they're not Trinidadians. So the best persons to speak to what is happening is the Trinidadians and the Tobagonians, because this election, there are many other elections coming up through the Caribbean. We've been hearing rumors of the Barbadian election, but we don't know. So, yeah. No, we usually start this evening session with a quote from the Living Bible. But before we do that, let me acknowledge um, our sponsors. And our sponsor is Lifelong Learning, the Human Development Foundation. So we want to say good evening to, lifelong learners and anybody who believes in the process of lifelong learning. Uh, we also want to thank Stuart and Perkins Caribbean, company that I am director of. So we always want to acknowledge and appreciate those persons. We don't only offer real estate, but we do economics, we do finance, we do something and some other stuff along with real estate. So thank you. To say good evening to some of my brothers and sisters from the Emergent Ventures over in Ireland. Um, Good evening to all of the viewers from in Ireland and to everybody at the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute. Uh, good evening. Um, we want to say good evening, Nigel, to everyone over in Ethiopia.
For sure.
Yeah, we want to say good evening to everybody over in Ethiopia and to
We
let
got
the
good
Ethiopians
questions
know
over
that
there.
yeah, but I won't let you speak to the Ethiopians specifically, but we just want
Mhm.
to acknowledge Ethiopia, the role Ethiopia historically played in global affairs, and we often like to acknowledge when the king of Ethiopia, who was Haile Selassie, came to Barbados and met Barrow,
Mhm.
who was our leader at the time. Uh, yeah, so over to you, Nigel.
Yeah, for sure. We on my trip over there, we fostered some great relationships. Some brothers from the Ethiopian Tawahedo faith, which is the Orthodox faith. We have very strong ties with the priests in Lalibela, so we keep in contact very often. So shout out to all the Ethiopian alternate viewers. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
we're represented globally.
yeah. I also want to acknowledge the Rastafari brethren, the local Rastafari brethren. We had a very good session on Saturday when you would address the brothers and sisters. So big respect to Bangladesh, big respect to Lumumba, and big respect to all of the Rastafari community. We had an excellent time sharing with them. So thank you guys. So to make that quote, remember this is just a random quote, never prepared. So my aunt landed me on Ezekiel. You know, Ezekiel. So I don't know if Certified Samson is listening, but Certified Samson we're quoted from Ezekiel, the a Bible book. Now, I mean Ezekiel, the character is a very interesting character,
Hmm.
and it's very good now to be quoted from Ezekiel, the book. Right? So Ezekiel has a powerful name, which relates to the Caribbean and the world now. So let us quote directly from that book, the Living Bible. Now it said, in mid-February of the 12th year of the king, the king's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord. Son of dust, mourn for Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him, you think of yourself as a strong young lion among the nations, but you are merely a crocodile along the banks of the Nile, making bubbles and muddy in the stream. The Lord God says, I will send a great army to catch you with my net. It will haul you out and leave you stranded on the land today, and all the birds of the heavens will light up upon you, and the wild animals of the whole earth will devour you until they are glutted and full. And I will cover the hills with your flesh, and fill the valleys with your bones, and I will drench the earth with your gushing blood, filling the rings to the top of the mountains. I will blot you out, and I will fill the heavens and darken the stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give you her light. Yes, darkness will be everywhere across your life. Even the bright stars will be dark above you. And when I destroy you, grief will be in many hearts among the distant nations you have never seen. Yes, terror shall strike in many lands, and their kings shall be terribly afraid because of all I do to you. And they shall shudder with terror when I brandish my sword before them, and they shall greatly tremble for their lives on the day of your fall. For the Lord God says, the sword of the king of Babylon shall come upon you, and it will destroy you with Babylon's mighty army, the terror of the nations. It will smash the pride of Egypt, and all her people all will perish. I will destroy all your flock herds that graze beside the stream. Neither man nor animal will disturb those waters anymore. Therefore, the waters of Egypt will be as clear and flow as smoothly as oil. And the Lord God says, and when I destroy Egypt, Nigel, right? When I destroy Egypt and wipe out everything she has, then she shall know that I, the Lord, have done it. Yes, pray for the sorrows of Egypt. Let all the nations weep for her and for her people, says the Lord. Yes,
Which chapter? Which chapter was that from Ezekiel?
that was chapter 32,
Hmm.
and I read up to verse 13.
Okay, okay, okay.
So all of the modern day Egyptians and all of the modern day pharaohs heed and pay close attention to the message that was just given. So the messenger, and I will call myself the messenger, right? Because people tend to want to shame persons, you know, who operate in those type of roles, professional roles. People want to bring shame on people who are drivers, people who are messengers, people who are maids, people who are cleaners. Um, we would call the low income jobs. People love to bring shame on those type of people. But it is those type of people, Nigel, that we saw during COVID that came to the rescue of the earth because they were called what? Essential workers. Huh?
For
They
sure.
were the they were the only ones on the road, the gas attendants, the supermarket workers, and these are the lowest paid people in any economy. Right? So
A calling is higher than an occupation, you know. You
yes,
know, we gotta start thinking and looking at things from a spiritual level. You got both, you know,
right,
earthly and spiritual, and we can't exist
yes.
without all the two.
Sometimes when
Carry on.
people get what they never expect, they become big headed and arrogant and unknowledgeable.
That is
You
true.
know?
That is true.
And unfortunately, no, when that morphs into like, when you have those type of disposition when you lead people and leading people know, that's where the problem comes in. You can be big headed and arrogant to yourself, but leading people know is a different scenario. You know how to put those things aside and really uh, handle people the way how persons um, need to be respected in this modern era. So, I mean, this gives me motivation to go and read a lot more of Ezekiel because I am seeing a lot of very interesting things. But
Hmm.
the heading of the quote was Israel's fate being predicted. So usually Nigel and Bob Marley said it well. How long shall we kill our prophets while we
Hmm.
stand aside and look? Eh,
Sure.
So in this day and age, I really think that we need to stand beside those persons who are brave enough and bold enough to support and do well for the country. I believe that these persons need to be supported, and the old selfish adage really Nigel of you know doing it for an upliftment or doing it to get up the class or doing it to for power just a lot over people Nigel. Um, those type of behaviors, no, the Lord spoke to the Egyptians about that.
Hmm.
So, Barbadians, if the message brings any wisdom to you, I think that I would have done my job. I think that I would have done my job. And in the song Nigel by Chronix, which is entitled Legend, it says that even if one person remembers your name, at least you would have made a change in life.
Sure, for sure.
Yes.
We don't need major change. Minor change works too. And all of
Yes.
those minor changes turn into a big avalanche. So, we gotta take our steps as they come. And as it will reaffirm your word song about supporting those who are standing up front, taking those lashes that the normal person don't usually want to take. That public scrutiny, that your name getting chomped on constantly. However, there's still a calling to do what is right, regardless of the consequences. As long as you know that you're in the right and you standing for truth, you always have support. So you shouting out to the people of Barbados to really hear that, and let that sink in.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. So now shall we move on to a quote now from the good book, but the second good book, by a great man, a man who made a change in my life. That is Dr. Dennis Law. Um, Dr. Dennis Law, and he made a very first impact on my life. So we always acknowledge those persons. So I just opened the book randomly. Just opened the book randomly, and it brought me to my boarding pass. So when I travel to other countries, so I just gonna quote what your life. I'm gonna do two things. Read page 265 of the book, right? Which gives you a table of it's called life view window. The life view window, right? And that was arguing that you need to do a self appraisal, right? To ascertain where you're at in life. So in doing this self appraisal, he actually sets up a table, a proper structured table on how you can appraise your life. Do a self introspection. And the headings are as follows. First and foremost, he lists health and physical well being. And the question underneath says, to what extent do I esteem my physical image? I'm going to repeat that. Health and physical well being. To what extent do I esteem my physical image? Two, spiritual awakening and fulfillment. What is my level of understanding regarding my spiritual status and well being? Spiritual awakening and fulfillment. What is my level of understanding regarding my spiritual status and well being? Number three, work and success. Work and success. What level of satisfaction do I get from my work? Number four, love and intimacy. Love and intimacy. How would I rate the current status of the love and intimacy in my life? How would I rate the current status of love and intimacy in my life? I hope the alternate viewers are mentally noting these questions, huh? Right? Because you're gonna, you know how we do. We're mentally noting these questions because it is important. Because Dr. Law is saying you need to put the spotlight on yourself first and foremost before you can put that spotlight on others. So, number five, friendship. How would I rate the quality and meaningfulness of my friendships? Friendship. How would I rate the quality and meaningfulness of my friendships? Purpose and realization. To what extent have I realized my purpose? Number seven, value stability. To what extent do I understand my value system? Okay. To what extent do I understand my value system? Number eight, inner self unity. Inner self unity. To what extent am I in harmony with myself and my spiritual power? inner self unity. To what extent am I in harmony with myself and my spiritual power? Number 9, level of contribution to others. Level of contribution to others. Dennis Lowe, look at him. Look at him. Right. Dennis Lowe. I know this probably gives some people who are not happy with themselves nightmares, Nigel. But The Journey by Dr. Dennis Lowe. See it there? Clinical psychologist. And it says, level of contribution to others. At what level am I contributing to the happiness and well-being of others? And lastly, number 10 says, status of inner contentment. Status of inner contentment. And the question underneath says, how happy am I with who I am and where I am? And then he has boxes. Then he has boxes to take off, and he says, high, moderate, mediocre, and low. Rate yourself. Rate yourself and see where you go from there. No. In all honesty,
you're frightening a lot of people, Kemar. A lot of people don't like looking at themselves, They don't like looking in the mirror and seeing what is that they're truly seeing and acknowledging. But I think The Journey. I read that book for myself. Very, very powerful. But continue. Sorry for cutting you, brother.
Well, go ahead. You didn't cut me. I'm listening to you.
No, for sure. In reading The Journey, a book written by a Barbadian. I don't think we do enough, and we said this on last season. Do enough with highlighting those who do literary work from our island. It speaks to having access to a certain type of mirror. We would have went through certain experiences that we share, certain culture, certain perspective on stuff like religion, family upbringing. Although we come from different households, the amalgamation of all of those, we can find those things are in common. And I find that in Dr. Dennis Lowe's book, he makes an excellent assessment, and he definitely did have his finger on the pulse when addressing the journey, trying to find true self, trying to find self and find that awareness and coming from an intrinsic level of living instead of external, which we could see now is more necessary than ever. For it seems as though the youth has lost any vision for themselves. But carry on, Mr. Stuart. Carry on.
Yeah. Well, I like that one. But I want to challenge your perspective where you said the youth. No, for the youth to be blind, the elders have to be blind as well. Right? I don't see the youth being blind without the assistance of the elders leading them blind. Right? No, we often like to speak about rebellion, and the youth are so rebellious and they can't be controlled. But let us address the level of disrespect that the young people in this country and in the Caribbean, right? And in the Caribbean, have to tolerate from people who consider themselves to be elders, consider themselves to be seniors, consider themselves to be in positions of influence, but it is often token appreciation, as in they will say, oh, well, we need the youth, but we need the youth to continue to perpetuate narratives which keep the youth basically at zero. So let me stay, Nigel, right? And I want to, in light of what you say, because Vihoy is saying that they really appreciate hearing your point of view. And I firmly agree with that, Nigel, right? And I want to read from 267 right, of Dr. Lowe's book, Dr. Dennis Lowe. And I would say something to you, but that is off camera. But that's off camera. No,
for sure.
Page 267, Dr. Lowe is saying, that too many individuals choose a path of denial, never moving towards that important starting point that leads to the renewal of the psychosocial self. But clearly, the way to this renewal begins with being honest and transparent, as well as a strong commitment to living out the virtues of authentic selfhood. It's all about finding the courage and determination to free the mind and reach for the heights of psychosocial renewal. There is certainly no value in refusing to do what is necessary, Nigel, to keep the self-esteem system at its more functional state. Thus, there must always be the drive to do the things that foster the best opportunity for personal wellness. Uh, and like what you said,
Hmm.
the Lord's trajectory, um, it's quite similar.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you say you had that perspective before you read the book,
I had that perspective, but I wasn't grounded in that perspective. No, the furthest distance we have to travel as human beings is knowing that something is good for us or being aware of what we should do and actually acting upon it. That's the furthest distance that we will have to travel. So it was like I had an idea of it, but in terms of how to go about living that out or pursuing to living that fully, that book helped me connect those dots, and that's what information is supposed to do for us. That's what knowledge is supposed to do for us. It's supposed to help us that what the ideas we already have and intrinsically know are true, to connect those dots so that we can close that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Don't forget to like and share alternative views. We're on the platform. Um, we want to ask you to share on WhatsApp. We want to ask you to share on Facebook. We want to ask you to give us a like. If you haven't subscribed to the program, we're asking you also to subscribe because the more you like, the more you share, the more persons could get access to the knowledge necessary. We're not necessarily focusing on the granular stuff all the time, but we're trying to do some personal development to assist people where they're at in their lives. Now, I want to take another reading from Dr. Law, but I want to also, I'm going back in the page now, where Dr. Law was speaking about one of his patients. Right? And he said, remember, some years ago, while working with one of my patients, I encountered an experience. As I recall the experience, this patient was totally miserable with life. I was experiencing growing feelings of despair and depression. As the clinical process was set in motion, she quickly indicated to me that she was only interested in feeling better, but did not want to get too deep into her personal problems. I immediately informed her that there was only one condition under which I would be able to help provide my services. That would be if she was willing to totally disclose her conditions and commit herself to working the healing process to its completion. Right? The healing process to its completion. With some hesitation and discomfort, she looked at him and said, Dr. Law, it's going to be hard for me to deal with all the baggage in my life since I have been trying to run away from it for so long. I constantly postponed this process. I really didn't think that I would ever want to deal with it. At this point, I assured her that I would do my very best to be sensitive to her discomforts. I would do everything to ensure that there's a certain level of openness and understanding will be applied to her situation. Dr. Law argued that the success of being able to successfully appraise oneself depends much on the degree of honesty in which these various issues are dealt with. Right. Right. If the decision is made to dig deep into the cell system and confront those issues that cause the life process to be retarded, then the appraisal process will most probably net impacting results. Dealing with the baggage that so often holds back so many persons, as well as with the feelings of anger, negative shame, and other toxic conditions, is a critical part of this process that must be confronted head on. And there is little sense in leaving untouched those life issues that cause many of us difficulty in life. Right? So, end quote. No. To dive into the comments. Right? Right. I want to acknowledge some of the alternate viewers. We have Fabian Yard. Good evening to Fabian. Welcome to Alternate Views. Bihoy, good evening. Good evening. Saying hi, Kemar. Looking forward to an interesting conversation. Good night to Nigel. Wendy
Yeah, good night.
Ford. Wendy Ford Griffith. Good night to you. Sir Alfred Engelman. Good night to you, sir, all the way in the diaspora. Stephen Knight. Good night to you, Stephen. Welcome to Alternate Views. Wayne Austin. Good night to you, Wayne. Welcome to the show. Bihoy is saying good evening to our Ethiopian brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. Leaning not on our own understanding. Bihoy said that it's not a quote, it's a reading. Yeah, potato, potato. Someone said that's called arrogance. All jobs are relevant. Well, if you believe it or not, we have some very serious people in society, and particularly in Barbados, who are very snobbish, and they do look down on certain levels of employment. Right? And if you ever did certain jobs previously in your life, you will forever be regarded as a nobody for these persons, and they will forever put stumbling blocks in your way to stop you from progressing. The only person that will more than likely help you is the Lord for these persons, and that is a fact, not speculation. And I'm telling you that from personal experience. Said my grandmother always said that if you're going to be a super, be a good one. Square four is saying good night. Good night to square four. Good night. Square four is saying good night to Nigel.
Yeah, good night, Square Four. Be yourself, man. Good to see you back on this good Thursday.
Yeah. Bihoy is asking a question to someone. Are you inviting honesty? Are you being authentically yourself and assessing who you are? We were going along those lines, and then the last couple sentences we read, Dr. Lord did say that to keep the process going, a serious degree of honesty is necessary to have the process going on. Oswald is saying good night. Bihoy is saying again, we cannot assess the world without knowing ourselves, and this is true. We can see others, but we can't see us. Good night to dear Warren, all the way from St. John, who's saying blessing the alternate viewers, hosts, and presenters. Good night to you. Good night to you, Dale. Haven't seen you on for a while, so thank you very much. They always say arrogance is what kills us, especially educationally and our professional self. And this is the point I just made, but I didn't see your statement. So we're in tune, we're on the same wavelength and frequency. Is that complimenting Nigel?
Yeah, for sure.
Tyrone Nurse and saying good night to you, Tyrone. All the way over in the diaspora. Thank you very much. Mr. Angel is saying good night Team, please like and share. Yes, like and share. Square 4 is saying the topic here tonight is Trinidad and Tobago. They say the Labour Party won back because Kamala refused to step aside and let someone younger take the lead. She took to the podium in tears and eyes and said, I resign. What? Oh, this is interesting. Because he's saying this is why he logged on. Now we're going to get into the Trinidad and Tobago session. However, we have invited guests and we don't want to speed ahead of the guests. So when Mr. Juke and Mr. Walker comes in, we definitely hit the Trinidad conversation. But before we get into that conversation, you know that we always do a session. Even if it's just 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we always do a session on personal development. We always do. And that is a ritual that we will not neglect. So the same way we practice it here, if we start to neglect it here, then we neglect it in our personal lives. So when the opportunity comes up to do it for your personal self, you would neglect it the same way. So we're not going to develop those habits. We're going to put in that time for personal development always. Yes. Now, Bihoy is saying this feels like I am at work. What do you do for work?
No, I think what he meant was the reading that you was talking, the levels of which you were talking about. It feels like work, and that sometimes could be the problem. It's supposed to feel like we're working on yourself. It's not supposed to be an easy thing, which is why most people shy away from it. However, as you said, Kemar, on alternate views, personal development is something that we push as lifelong learners. That is something that we push. Habits are transferable. A good habit in one area of life can definitely add and improve a next area of your life. So maintaining those habits throughout, that leads to a more aligned person, a more authentic person, a more honest person. So if we can stick to those things and we show up in front of the viewers and share our points of view, you know it's coming from someone that's authentic and has a level of integrity about the habits that they choose to create and have in this world. So I think that's what he was meaning. He could correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you guys have that convo. Y'all seem to be a match made in right here on Earth. um, so we have Clayty Vaughn. So good night to Clayty. Saying good night, Kemar, guests, viewers. Good night to you. Good night to Jennifer Sandiford Rochester. Welcome to the program. Good to have you on. Tyrone is saying we're getting some static in the data. I hope that it is clean now. So just ensuring that we are clean. Behind clarify that she is a female, and we're glad great to interact with you, Behoy. And we like learn the questioning, and it is helping to motivate us to dig deeper and to keep the fire going. Yes. So we haven't seen the others as yet. So I just want to give them some more time to make it in. So I'm going to go on and take a quote from Alternative Views, Nigel. Nice. I'm going to take a quote from Alternative Views. And then we're going to move on from there. So I am going to read from page 45 of Alternative Views, the book. Alternative Views, the book. And I want to say that I just want to remind all and sundry that Barbados is really and truly still very much under the clutches of the International Monetary Fund and the IMF. So when we're speaking about personal development, Nigel, when we're speaking about the future of ourselves as human beings existing within the space, the Caribbean space. We often think about having children, having families, and trying to further the generations. But how practical, how practical are these goals? In the ever-existing cost of living crisis. How practical are these goals to aspire to family, and I mean like a big extended family. We're not talking about just like one kid, and that is what we're talking about 4 or 5 children. Like, how practical is that to achieve in this day and age without it being an extensive financial burden? Right? So whereas before previously, whereas previously, um, we once had larger extended families as part of the landscape of Barbados. Like, we are seeing more nuclear families, or we have seen more nuclear families emerge, and now we're seeing more single parent families emerge, Nigel. And to guarantee you that one of the factors contributing to that is the ever existing cost of survival, cost of living for basic necessities. Um, very much sure that is the same way over in the States, right?
Cost of living is on the rise, and everything something goes up, it never comes back down. That being reflected in Barbados, I would ask a question though: doesn't it make more sense as things increase to pull together versus standing on a single leg? I think you got more balance on 2 legs than one.
Um, Ask the question in a different sense.
Okay, so you said the advent of the cost of living and also affecting the families. We went from extended families with granny, uncle, auntie, cousins, everybody living, if not under the same roof, not too far from each other. Then slim that down to nuclear families, just mommy, daddy, and the kids and the children. Now you said there's a surgence of single parent households. You said that in effect with the cost of living, like those two things are connected to each other in a way. So I'm saying, would
Uh-huh.
it not make more sense as things cost more money to be more pulled together versus standing on one leg, standing as a single parent? That's what he's saying to you.
Pull together. Um, who are you looking for the single parent to pull with per se?
I mean, that through the tango. Oh, I only know about Jesus being a virgin birth, unless you know next month. So you go let me know. So in that capacity is my train of thought.
Well, he's single for a reason, you know. He's single for a reason because one, lately the relationship did not work out the way it was supposed to. Um, so yeah, no,
So you said money is an impact on that, causing a relationship to continue or not continue.
well, unfortunately, money is a big factor in the longevity of relationships, especially in the modern era.
Hmm, hmm.
Right? So let's be real. We are men, and we watch social media, we watch TikTok, we interact with females um, in our everyday life, and in our everyday life, and we know that if we do not have um, adequate amount of resources to be able to, and here we get a little bit Kevin Samuels, no, pay for dates, basically pay the court,
Hmm.
and you basically have to be paying for. If you enter, you have to pay. As a man, you have to pay something, some things, right? We're men, so we're speaking from the man's perspective. Not saying that women don't do that stuff, but we're speaking from the man's perspective. If you don't have any money, realistically, right, and you have not only a child, but You also have to take care of the relationship. It is going to be strenuous for you as a man because you have to pay for um you have to pay for you have to pay for prenatal care, meaning which is pregnant. Then you have to pay for postnatal care after the baby comes,
Mhm.
and then you still have to take care of your wife or your, you know, yeah, you have to take care of the
Okay.
person.
Fair
So
enough. I hear that and I see that perspective as well. Looking at the landscape of modern dating in this era, I
yeah.
somehow can't help but look back to the past as well. As I sure, and speaking candidly, there are many men, I say we speaking from a man's perspective, that carry two or more households back in the days when money wasn't as much as it is now, but things also didn't cost as much. However, there were many men leading two and three households with awareness going on that's the reality. So if money now in this modern time is a impact or effect of people choosing to stay together or leaving each other, I would challenge it. I don't think it's really the money that is the issue. I just think maybe it's the mindset, maybe it's the principles that one is standing on that would now dictate whether or not, well, I can't be with you because you can't give me this material thing, as Vihoy says, as she says. So we correct that going forward. Apologies earlier. Um, but so I think it's more of a mindset and principles type of thing versus how much money it is. Because again, two is always more than one is always better than one. So that is where I would point to, maybe not necessarily economic per se. I think that's a more deeper level than economics. Because we've seen people survive or for very little.
Hmm. Well, hmm. let's say it this way. We need better point. Well, I guess our grandfathers and great grandfathers didn't have any so-called financial education that we need now, and
Hmm.
they were able to say make a couple of households happy on just a salary that was year enough, a laborer's salary, a carpenter's salary, a fisherman's salary,
Hmm.
right? Then eventually, as these laborers sent their kids to school, they got the education and started to head into the offices and stuff. Um, but along the way, inflation grew, Nigel. Right? Inflation grew, and because of what we say modern day living, right? Modern day living. So one observation that could be made of modern day living is that families tend not to eat so much we call Sunday food together. People are, well, I say I know a lot of people who do it on a Sunday, but more and more people are moving away from Sunday food. So as opposed to eat a good big pot of Sunday food, if you see the lines in Shafet on Sunday,
Hmm.
right? The lines in Shafet on Sunday are so long, right? And people buy fast food, and that comes with a cost, right? No, that comes at a cost. But nowadays, is there really a difference between how expensive fast food is and how expensive slow food is? It's not really a difference, right? So there's not many options available to live a much cheaper way of life for basic necessities, right? For basic necessities. No, obvious. I mean, we could run off this conversation, Nigel, but I really want to get
Hmm.
to Tobago. Unfortunately, Joshua has indicated that it is probably about 2 a.m. where he's at right now. We're not to 3 in the morning, and it is difficult given his circumstances right now to tune on to the program. So we just want to await Mr. Duke. Mr. Duke is actively on the ground campaigning as we speak. So we have to give Mr. Duke a minute to sign on to the program. So we're gonna go at it, Nigel. Trinidad, Tobago, the general election in Trinidad and Tobago. This election is the 28th of April, I believe. Right? Trinidad. Yeah. It's a general election. And you have a couple of interesting things happening in Trinidad and Tobago, Nigel.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just share a couple of facts here. Just share a couple of facts here. As you know, Trinidad is a twin island republic. It is a republic. So, republic meaning it is not a republic like Guyana, right? A people's republic. A republic for the people by the people is not that. Trinidad is basically a ceremonial president or ceremonial state where the president of Trinidad and Tobago is not voted for by the people. Not. The president of Trinidad, much like how the president of Barbados is being instructed, is that the parliament nominates a person to become president. So whoever has the majority votes in the house then votes for that person to be president. So by extension, whichever government is in power, and we practice the partisan political system, whichever government is in power basically chooses whoever becomes the president. The president is not open to voting scrutiny or to public scrutiny. That is Trinidad. Right? Remember, we had Mr. Duke on the show before, and Mr. Duke would have said that Tobago is basically a ward of Trinidad, the much larger state.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what happens in Trinidad transcends on what happens with Tobago. Mr. Duke, Watson Duke, is contesting over in Tobago for one of the seats. I think Tobago is divided up at least two constituencies, Tobago East and Tobago West. And as far as I know, Mr. Duke is going for Tobago East. Right, for Tobago East. And we wish Mr. Duke all the best in his future endeavors going forward. I think he's currently sitting member of parliament, Nigel, but can't call it member. They're called assemblymen. So Mr. Duke is the assemblyman for the Tobago constituency, Tobago East constituency, I believe. He's starting to be corrected. And he's contesting again for the seat, and we wish him all of the best. Now, on mainland Trinidad, right? On mainland Trinidad, you had a couple of events happening there, political events in the lead up to the general election. So, Bihoy is asking me, do you agree that's how the president should be chosen? What's your view? Bihoy, I've said many times before that I believe a president should be voted for by the people. It could be done like how America does theirs, in terms of like a person would put themselves up for president, and the people would go and vote directly for who they want to become the president. That is my view. I don't believe that the president should just be handpicked. So, you're the president, go ahead. Don't believe that. Yeah. So, as I was saying, Trinidad had a prime minister, Nigel, almost the leader to the election, and his name was Dr. Keith Rowley.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Keith Rowley. And Mr. Rowley, Nigel, has since then stepped aside. Nigel, right? Mr. Rowley has then stepped aside. I think he's approximately like 75 years old. Right? I'm just going to show you his photo. This gentleman was the prime minister of Trinidad for a couple of years now. Right? For a couple of years now. And since then, he has stepped down, Nigel, to do what we call succession planning. Right. So this is Dr. Christopher Rowley, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, and he was the Prime Minister there of Trinidad and Tobago. Right. As I said, he stepped down, Nigel, and he would have passed the power or the baton basically onto a gentleman whose name is Mr. Stuart Young. So here you have it. See on my screen. So here's Mr. Young. He is currently the Prime Minister as Mr. Rowley stepped down. He is now the leader, Nigel, of what you would call the PNM in Trinidad. And then the other major party is the United National Congress. Okay. So here we have it again, Nigel, the two-party dynamic. The two-party dynamic. Right, the two-party dynamic existing over in Trinidad as well. And Joshua spoke extensively on this last time he was on Alternate Views. Right. So here you have the two-party dynamic in mainland Trinidad dominating the political narrative. So you have Miss Kamala Prasad Visesar for your same Nigel, and then you have Mr. Stuart Young. Now, let us come here. It says here that Nigel, the PNM and the UNC have been the two largest parties. In addition, having supplied every prime minister since 1991 in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Much similar to Barbados with the BLP and the DLP, they produced almost every single prime minister that we had since 1966. You were either a BLP prime minister or a DLP prime minister. We didn't have any prime ministers. Says that. Now, over in Tobago, no, Nigel. Right? Over in Tobago, there's a difference. There's a difference. So, Mr. Duke would have contested. Mr. Duke would have contested the election over in Tobago, right? Completely removing the PM in Trinidad, mainland Trinidad. Their contest for Tobago as well. Remember, it's really truly one country, two islands, but one country, right? So Mr. Duke formed a new political party called the Patriotic Democratic Party, or the PDP, in Tobago, and Mr. Duke toppled the PNM in Tobago, and the PNM controlled Tobago for extensive amount of years. Right? For an extended amount of years. And Mr. Duke changed, Nigel, the trajectory of Tobago by bringing a new party and then allowing that party, right, allowing to contest election, and Mr. Duke, Mr. Watson Duke, would have made history in Tobago by winning both seats in Tobago. Right, so here is the history. Watson Duke would have won both seats in Tobago, completely changing the trajectory of Tobago. Right? Since then, Mr. Duke's party had a split, and Tobago has a system where the head of Tobago system is not necessarily called a prime minister, Nigel, but it's called a chief secretary. A chief secretary. And I have learned that through the fact that I also had Mr. Farley, Augustine. I sat with Mr. Farley on an online program similar like this, and we had extensive conversations. So I had online conversations both with Mr. Duke and Mr. Farley from right here in Barbados, right? And we learned deep political history on Tobago, etc. Now the current setup is Mr. Duke has his party having one seat, and then Mr. Farley, they were once a team, but they're not a team anymore. He has his own party, and they are battling it out for Tobago. These are two new parties, huh? So you will see here, you don't see the PNM or you don't see UNC, which were the historical larger parties, right? You don't see those parties really making a showing over in Tobago. So that's an interesting dynamic, Nigel. So breaking news, as Square Forward has said, and I hope this is factual and not a meme or anything like. But Square Forward is saying that the leader of the United National Congress in Trinidad, Kamala Persad, would have resigned as leader. No, I don't have a full confirmation, so we're relying on you, Square Forward, to give this confirmation. We rely on you to give this confirmation that is indeed true that Kamala Persad would have stepped down. Would have stepped down as leader for the United National Congress, which is the largest Nigel opposition party in Tobago. Now, the reasons for stepping down are what people were speaking about succession planning, Nigel. Succession planning. And you keep hearing the constant theme of succession planning, planning for the future, the role that the young people are going to play in the future. And here you have it. The PNM, which was traditionally, I don't want to take it down like race, but you know, in Trinidad, there's a race angle to politics. There's a race angle to politics. Right? Not saying that you don't have people from different races supporting both institutions, but predominantly Nigel, the black people traditionally voted the party lines for one institution, and then the Indian people in Trinidad voted along particular lines, also for a particular institution, right? So out comes the 28th of February, the People's National Movement made a master stroke succession plan. The leader stepped down. You have a much younger, vibrant leader who has more longevity in politics. Fighting somebody who was prime minister before, right? But Ms. Persad was prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago before Nigel, and she was making another shot at it to go again. And people were criticizing the fact that she should consider succession planning and handing the leadership of her party over to somebody much younger. Now, not just political parties, Nigel, but in the private sector, in government, I would say in the Caribbean, we do not do well to bring about succession planning in these institutions. Right? We don't do it well to hold on to pass the buck on to the younger generations. So to see it clearly, majority of the institutions across the island are dying. Trade unions are dying. political parties, Nigel, are dying, and I mean the ones in Barbados as well. The churches are dying because they're not replacing the elders with the younger people, right? And it's not to say just go in and snatch up a person and say, well, look, you come and you become the thing. Again, the elders have to, motivate that type of energy from the young people. So the churches too. There are businesses in Barbados, Nigel, that were formed by businessmen, and they don't have their kids. Like, they don't have the kids in the business. Um, they don't have the kids in the business, Nigel, taking on the roles and learning to. So whenever the entrepreneur dies, the business dies with the entrepreneur. And good businesses usually don't last much longer because there was never that level of succession planning. So
Let me cut you there real quick. And answer you a question. You said a lot, and you gave people a lot of food, but in clarity, just so we can have some points of references, right? As you said, we can see the emergence of two new political parties within Tobago. One started initially by Watson Duke, where he was able to win both of the seats. Uh, he had a partner in that. They split. He formed his own party, and now those are the two parties that are vying for Tobago. Now, let me ask you this: we talking about global context and local view. Can you see that happening in Barbados, where there's an emergence of different political parties, having seen that since its foundation, since independence, BLP, DLP? Do you think the people of Barbados are ready or want something new, something fresh, something more youthful? Because from my perspective, it seems that certain ways of being, certain perspectives, certain principles on life has run its course. And if we can't plan for the future or have a vision for the future, then that's a devastating outlook to have in life. But just to reiterate the question, do you think Barbados is ready for another political party, something different?
well, using the word ready, I won't use the word ready, but I believe that I started my political journey with what people would consider to be a third party, right? Um, and I got over 100 and something votes in St. Michael Northeast against Motley, like, who was supposed to be the big juggernaut going up for prime minister, doing all of these things, the opposition leader, and here was a new institution going up. Now, if there was not an appetite, I probably would have gotten 5 votes. Right? If you look at the voter turnout in Barbados, it was the lowest ever in the history of the country, right? Which indicates that people are experiencing a lack of confidence in both the BLP and the DLP. And that's not my personal opinion. Look at the voter turnouts. Look at the results, and it will show you that the general population, they're losing their confidence. Right? So next time when you monitor the results, you will see based off the turnout if people are experiencing a return of confidence in the institutions to move forward. Right? Because it's saying that you can't only have the youth, that is also sad. Now, let me just state, Vioy, that constantly we repeat on alternate views that this is a multi-generational thing, right? But because we are young people and because we were never senior and because we were never aged, we cannot, right? We cannot speak for being senior, right? We can only speak for having open relationships and open communication with the seniors, right? But we were never in that bracket, right? We were never in that bracket. So I am saying to you that both Nigel and we are believers in multi-generational leadership, cross-generational leadership, and we often speak about having the wisdom shared and passed on between the elders and the youth, having the passing off the baton. Even though the elders may retire, still having after work scenarios that they could be engaged, um, and having them back in the space to keep the institutional knowledge. We are proponents of that. Right, we're proponents of that. We've never taken the line of saying that, well, get rid of the old people and just the young people. That's not our narrative. Maybe on some other youth programs, but that's never been us. So we want everybody on alternate views to remember our positions, our philosophical positions, because they're going to be important for billing on the show, right? For billing for the future, they're going to be important for everybody to know that they're included in our alternate views. Right? Yeah, I'm articulating to you back is an articulation. So we share, you share a point, I share back a point. We have, that's what we do on alternate views, robust discussion. So as I was saying though, if you look at the results, right, it was the lowest voter turnout ever in the history of Barbados. Right? The lowest voter turnout, 30 love all over again. Right? So I saw somebody speak about COVID, that's irrelevant. Any other thing that you could speak about right now that you could believe that pointed to a low turnout, that's irrelevant, completely irrelevant. The fact remains, Nigel, when you look at the end result, it shows the lowest voter turnout ever in the history of Barbados, ever. Right? 30 love all over again. Right? I ran in the election, so I know how it went exactly. Right? I know how it went exactly. And I am saying to you, in my time being on the ground, right? In my time being on the ground, moving around, that would have been in the city of Bridgetown at the time, trying to get around to other constituencies to assist comrades when you have the time. The vote apathy towards the political parties, both of them are very high. So you be living in fool's paradise, think that either side right now is riding on this star quality popularity. On the ground is a different experience, is a different hearing, and if they are to return on such favor, they have to get back on the ground and really deal with the people. Right. So let me just say this: I'm on this topic. Right.
But hold on, hold on. I just want to make sure because you didn't answer the question. The question was, you said you won't use the word ready. However, is Barbados in a space, youth and elders that they are willing, or do you think that they would give a third party, having seen that you started your political journey with a third party? Do you think they're ready for that? That is the question I'm asking you.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't say use the word ready, Nigel, but
Mm.
right, persons have tried to put themselves up there and achieved a measure of success. So
Okay.
if nothing beats a try, right, nothing beats the effort, and nothing beats the vision. So Watson Duke had a vision for the PDP and Tobago. Errol Walton Barrow had a vision when he left the Barbados Labour Party and went on to form the Democratic Labour Party and eventually leading it on to becoming the government. Now, if Errol Barrow had other ideas and thought he probably would have never been Errol Barrow as we know him, right? And at the time, you couldn't say that people were ready or weren't ready, right? Took us into independence and did what he had to do for us at the time. and now we're here. So I am saying that the way how times evolve and the way how times change, um, you never know, Nigel. You never know. No, right. So let me answer this last question, and I think I'm gonna move off this topic. Hey, saying that that was very relevant, and you can't discount an outlier or anything that impact that. No, in 2018, what was the outlier, right? Because we're trying to focus mainly on other spaces, but in 2018, right? In 2018, what was the outlier? Right? What was the outlier? There was no significant outlier in the 2018 election that would have caused the people of Barbados to get and go and vote for Drules to make me a Motley the Prime Minister of the country. 30 love. Such a big deal. What was the trigger or the outlier? People voted in that particular direction. Right? So fast forward, you had the election during COVID. People still lined up and they went to vote. And the fact remains, right? The fact remains is that Mia Motley is still Prime Minister today. So COVID, outlier, no outlier, right? Outlier, no outlier. The fact remains, through whatever circumstances remain, no matter what we tell ourselves to pacify the situation, Nigel, the fact remains we still have a sitting Prime Minister who basically won 30 love. Right? Not 2091, 30 love. Right? We now have a so-called, and I say so-called opposition, but this opposition that we have came straight out to the Barbados Labour Party. Cross the floor. Right? These are facts that you cannot discuss. These are facts that you, right? Boy, right. I think I'm gonna move off the conversation because we're spending too much time dwelling on it, or I keep repeating the same things over and over and over. You're asking me the same exact question in different forms. So let's leave it. Let's talk about it off camera, maybe. Yeah, because we gotta move on. So as a thing, basically, Nigel, that what we can see here between Young and the Cesar, right? People were criticizing, right? Criticizing Miss Cesar for, you know, a succession plan. Right? We're criticizing her for a succession plan. No, here when I speak about control narratives of nature, control narratives, there are other political parties which exist in Trinidad and Tobago outside of the PNM and the UNC. Right? There are other political parties which exist outside of these two parties. Right? And I'm trying to get the story up on the screen here. Trying to get the story up on the screen where you can see persons from other political parties that emerged or are emerging in Trinidad, mainland Trinidad, not to be. Right? So you have Michaela Pandey, Nigel. Right? Miss Pandey is basically the leader of a new political party called the Patriotic Front in Trinidad. Right? Leader of the party in Trinidad. And Ms. Pandey is now leading a new party called the Patriotic Front. Right? Now, what person would have wanted, right, what persons would have wanted Nigel um, would have been a much younger person, right? A much younger person to be the leader of what you call the UNC, right? Where the more senior statesman would have been a leader, have a more fair balance, but in terms of age, vibrancy, etc., etc. That's what persons wanted. And then here comes the formation of a new political party in Trinidad by Miss Pane, right? Um, outside of Miss Pane Nigel, there are other political parties emerging. So you have another political party who's headed by a minister, or well, a former, I would say a former commissioner of police, right? His name is Gary Griffith, right? Mr. Gary Griffith Nigel is the leader of a new political party in Tobago, right? Not Tobago, sorry, Trinidad, right?
As NTA.
National Transformation Alliance. Yes,
That
that
is his part.
is Gary Griffith. And Gary Griffith has his party, right? So here's Gary Griffith, who's a former top cop. He has his party, which is called the NTA, right? When you go past Gary Griffith, no, because there are so many coming up. Right? There's so many coming up. You have Philip Alexander, right? Philip Alexander, and he has what you call the PEP, right? The
Hmm.
PEP political party. Right? So let me just get a nice
Progressive
photo of you.
Empowerment Party.
Let me get a nice photo of you, um, of Philip, so that you can see his what is going on here. So this is Philip Alexander. Right? This is Philip Alexander. Right? Philip Alexander. Philip Alexander is leading the PEP in Trinidad. Right? So, as far as my knowledge shows me, there seems to be some coalitions happening. Seems to be some coalitions happening. As the historical narratives think that the party is not very weighty, they don't last very long. Um,
Mm.
if they're not born out of one of the larger organizations, they tend to die. So third parties look for homes to do coalitions with the larger parties, because the larger parties will have larger membership bases, and you would try to tap into those places, whatever, right? And somebody is saying Keezel Jackson, who was once with Mr. Juke, right? Keezel Jackson. So let me get her up. Keezel,
Her All People's Party.
yes,
That is
APP,
All People's Party,
APP.
which was founded last year. So
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of these parties you mentioned were formed in the last 10 years,
yeah.
outside of the two that were from the beginning, from the independence days, which you would call them the elder statesmen of parties. But now we have some children coming up,
Mm-hmm.
contesting for that they can do it better. They have watched and listened and received what the other parties had to do and say, but no, they have come and said, it sounds like to me they have come and said, hey, listen, I think we could do this a little better than when we see when a roadmap, and I don't think when a lead we No way that is good. That is astonishing. That is four parties outside of the normal two. That's very interesting. Carry on, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I wanted to show you Kizel Jackson, and she has the All People's Party, or we call the APP Party. Um, APP Party in Trinidad as well. So these are the main parties that I noticed on the landscape. Right? Um, with the exception of Mr. Juke, being a historical winner, um, I do not foresee. I mean, I do not foresee any of the newer institutions like ready out to take over mainland Trinidad with such ease. I mean, it could happen. It's highly possible in this day and age, based off voter patterns, based off voter trends, um, voter turnouts. Again, not just um, not just in Barbados, but voter turnouts throughout the Caribbean were generally low, right? If you go and you watch or you read to the voter turnouts for Caribbean elections, um, majority of them were substantially not favorable. Right? Right. We spoke about Farley, but we didn't mention Farley's party. Oh yeah, we did mention about Farley's party in Tobago, JK. So probably we missed that part when we spoke about Farley being in the Tobago house. So we spoke about the Tobago house, and then we came over to mainland Trinidad, but we spoke about that earlier. So I am predicting, Nigel, right? I'm predicting basically that as we proceed through this Trinidad election, and then I saw Tyrone speaking about the Canadian election happening in Canada. Um, there are going to be some political shifts around the world, around the globe, right? So what's interesting is that Trinidad is basically facing like almost like a snap election, right? Canada is facing like a snap election as well. So these were not general elections that were constitutionally due and properly planned, right? Both the leaders in Canada and Trinidad uh, stepped down, right? Stepped down and appointed somebody else, and now somebody else is looking to face the polls to have their own mandate as prime minister. No, I want to say something here, right? Um, as you learn and as you become a lifelong learner, right? As you become a lifelong learner, people don't hold the same views, they don't hold the same perspectives as they did when they were younger. Anybody who says to me that they're the same exact person when they're 20 versus when they were 40, well, you have some personal development. People's perspective change. People block hop in political parties. So today they're BLP, then the next minute they're DLP, then the next minute they're BLP, then the next day there's a DLP, then they're back to being a DLP, then they're back to being a DLP. That's how politics in Barbados rank basically. Um, so an observation, right? And your perspective don't change, right? Particularly on the politics of the Caribbean, Nigel, and the way how you are seeing much younger institutions popping up to deal with the perspectives of, I would say, the alternate viewers. Basically, people who see things different, people who see society different, people who see politics different, people who see economics different, people who see the law different, people who interpret the law different, right? So the way how the Lords of England would have interpreted the law in the 1800s, I believe, is slightly different compared to how they would interpret the law today, right? So any person wishing for the medieval lords to come back to power to interpret laws, you, I would say basically that you lost the plot to always remain at the back of the pack, where the colonizers will continue not only to tell you what to do, but to think for you, right? To think for you, to determine your economic future, to determine your uh, political future, right? You may say, no, we're free, we're independent, we're this, we're that, and give yourself this self gratification that you're really free when you are. So the future, Nigel, of the region and the future of these systems, right? And the future of these systems, um, they depend on a good succession plan. Not only a succession plan for the leader, not only a succession plan for the leader, but a succession plan for the institution, the broad institution, right? Because the institution is not only made up of a leader, the rank and file, or what you call the ordinary members of institutions, are the ones who really drive, who do the thought driving, who do the thinking. And leadership is supposed to encompass the thoughts of those persons that they lead, um, to help manifest and take care of the needs of those persons that they lead. However, when the leadership, like when the leadership grows away from responding to the needs of the members, then the institutions begin to dwindle and they begin to die. People lose confidence, Nigel, in the institutions because the institutions are no longer meeting a particular need, right? No longer meeting a particular need. But there are some people in society who hold on to institutions for philosophical reasons, for personal reasons, for reasons that they probably don't know, as like your mother or your father told you to do it, and you were never mentally free, so you just fall along those lines. Um, they often hear the slogan, "Man, this is the way it was all along." People either vote for the PNM or the UNC, the GLP or the PNP, like the DLP. That's just how it is, and people just do that. Well, it observes some of it to be true. Like people just do these things because that's what exists, right? That's what exists. I often get the shock of my life, right? I often get the shock of my life when we begin to underestimate, right? Underestimate the collective power of the people, right? The collective power of the people. It's unfortunate. It's just, look at it. When a population done with you, they're done with you. I mean, they come back after years and years of rebuilding confidence. So a good example would be Decon Mitchell in Grenada, who, and I have to say he's one of my favorite prime ministers. He's one of my favorite prime ministers in the Caribbean. A young person, right? Let me try to get him on the screen. Decon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada. He was a very young person, right? A very young person. When he became the leader of what you would call the NDC in Grenada, right? The NDC in Grenada. So let me try to get the comment up. Yes, yes, yes.
Let me just take this moment to say thank you to all the alternate viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Keep the comments lively. I can see you guys really like this political conversation. Just want to give a shout out to Burkina Faso and Traore. He also is a young person, 37 years old, uh, doing a phenomenal job at battling and combating the state of neo-colonialism that has been left throughout the globe, actually, in Africa and in the diaspora, in small island states like Barbados. So it is a global collective consciousness that is pushing now for new ideas, fresher ideas. The youth, you always hear that the youth is the way and the youth is the key. Now we are actually seeing space not only being opened up, but being created for the youth to step in and say, well, hey, we do have a voice and we have a say into what this life is going to look like for us. But yeah, carry on, sir.
Yeah. So here you have Decon Mitchell, a young person. Um, he was fairly young in age when asked to lead a traditional political party, right? A traditional political party. His party was down and out, right? Down and out. If any persons out here know the history of Saint Grenada, you know that Dr. Keith Mitchell, right? Dr. Keith Mitchell, who was the leader of this is a funny one though, the NNP in Grenada. Right? Dr. Keith Mitchell, who was the leader of the New National Party in Grenada. Decon Mitchell would have beaten Keith Mitchell, right? The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, um, longest serving Prime Minister in Grenadian history, holding office for more than 22 years, and he was leader of the NNP from 1989 to 2004. Then, he was shifted over to leader of opposition after he was beaten by Decon Mitchell, a young 40-some-year-old beat out, basically, older Mitchell. Right, so I didn't bring him up, so bad. Right, so this is the older Mitchell. This is the older Mitchell who was the leader of the NNP, the Prime Minister of Grenada for 24 years, I said. And yeah, right. So historically, the younger people in the Caribbean, the younger educated leaders, have been taken on the foot measure, but within the space of the traditional political parties. Persons like Michaela Pandey and the others, as you know, Michaela Pandey, her father would have been Bajio Pandey, and he was also Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So she's basically what you call like a legacy candidate, right? A legacy candidate. And she has stepped out of the realm of the establishment and went on to form her own political organization. Um, Decon Mitchell, he stayed within the ranks, or he did what he had to do within the ranks of the NDC, given the political instability in Grenada, where we had the People's Revolution, right, led by Maurice Bishop. So let me get Mr. Bishop on the screen here. Maurice Bishop. So he would have been Prime Minister for a very short while, leading the complete People's Revolution, Nigel. Complete People's Revolution, and there he is, Mr. Maurice Bishop. He was later um, assassinated, whatever. They had a Grenada invasion by the U.S. government, and persons like Bernard Card and the others, and the rest is history. So, People's Revolutionary Government, Maurice Bishop, another young person, challenging the status quo. Didn't last very long, and then due to the instability in Grenada, we then went on to have a more structured system. In the New National Party and the NDC in Grenada. Right? So you mentioned, Nigel, Burkina Faso. Right? Someone mentioned Andrew Holness. Right? Andrew Holness, who was a very young guy at the time. Um, I think that, and if my memory serves you right, it was Prime Minister Bruce Gordon, Nigel, who made a succession plan for Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Bruce Gordon was the Prime Minister of Jamaica for a very short while. His term came to an end under some questionable circumstances, yes. However, he stepped aside and allowed a young, let me try to get him up. I'm just going to show Bruce first, and then we're going to show Andrew Holness. Bruce Gordon. Right? Bruce Gordon is um, a very good person who I like to read after. Bruce was also an economist, but he has a bachelor's in economics, and he was a very bright mind. I think that he, if allowed to continue in Jamaica, he would have done wonders for that country. Right, so this is Bruce Gordon, former Prime Minister, Nigel, of Jamaica, right? And he then made a succession plan for Andrew Holness. So let's look at Andrew Holness, being a young leader and the Prime Minister of Jamaica today as we speak, heading for a general election where the Jamaican public has to decide if they want to give him, Nigel, a third term, a third term in office, or if they want to give the opposition leader in Jamaica a chance. So, Africa, we're headed to Africa. You mentioned Ibrahim Traore.
Mm-hmm.
Young visionary mind. He was born in 1888, they say. Yeah. So he's fairly young. And he took control of Burkina Faso in September of 2022. And he ousted the interim president in what you call a coup at age 37. And he is currently the second youngest head of state in the world. Okay. Second youngest head of state in the world. And we all know the good things Traore is doing. Nigel, the Burkina Faso, supported by whoever. Now, there's a guy I want to mention. Yeah, somebody asked me about Rob Gonzalez. I could say basically that Rob Gonzalez, his earlier political journey, I believe, Nigel, that Rob Gonzalez would have formed the ULP, or the party he leads now. Because you had other larger political parties in St. Vincent. So you had the St. Vincent Labour Party, and those parties became defunct. And then Ralph Gonzalez assisted to form the ULP, and then the ULP went to win the elections, and then Ralph Gonzalez was never ousted. He's looking at 6 terms, Nigel, as a Caribbean leader right there in St. Vincent. Right? So it comes down to the point that I made again. When the people of a population are done with you, you're done, Nigel. Not saying that things can happen for you later by luck and a chance, but other things emerge to take on the fight. Now somebody saying that Ralph started the MNU. I can't recall the MNU. I remember Ralph emerging in the ULP. Right, so I might change my language and say he might not have founded it per se. All right, but he was heavily involved in it, that he ended up as a leader. Right, and since then he was there. He's not been ousted, and he did what he had to do. No, there are two guys I want to speak about, two world leaders, right? Who were very guys when they took over their countries. And these guys are, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I am going to show you. Right. Um, right. Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, Nigel. No, yeah, Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin was also a very young leader when he took over from Gorbachev, Nigel.
Mhm.
Okay, took over, and Putin says he took over Russia as a very young leader too, Nigel. Putin has been in office from since then up until this day. He's actually the longest serving Russian president since the independence of Russia from the Soviet Union. Remember, the Soviet Union made up of all those Soviet countries, etc., etc. I would like people to read the history of the Soviet Union, and then you would better understand the Russia-Ukraine war, as opposed to just seeing it from the emotional perspective. And if you read that history, then you would better get an idea as to why Russia would want to annex Ukraine. Right? Not saying that I support it, however, when you get facts, then it becomes more clear why it is happening. Right? Now, another leader, Nigel, another world leader that we often demonize, but we don't really go and read on these people in a serious way. Right? She, yeah. I mean, ah, have him here. Right? This leader is someone who people don't necessarily stop time, not take a moment to just go with an open mind and look and read, do your research, do your analysis, and garner information. And that is President Xi Jinping of China. Right? Now, Xi Jinping was a fairly young guy in Asia. Right?
When you
Or
say fairly, what do you mean when you say fairly young?
I would say young enough. Right? He was born in 1953, basically. Right? And he took over in 2013. Right? So I would say that is still fairly youngish, you know, youngish, not totally young, but youngish, and especially in China, that is youngish,
That's
because
pretty standard.
yeah, in the culture they respect seniority. Right? In the culture they respect seniority. Um, so to make it happen in China, that would be good. So let's do a quick thing here. Bro. Well, you see, he took it about a young 50 high, sits a little bit.
Mhm.
But I was saying China, Nigel, like seniority and eldership is usually how the Chinese lead their organizations. They definitely believe in stalwarts. And yeah, so that's why I said the words young-ish, Nigel. Right? Young-ish. And not necessarily the number as in, yeah, but he was young-ish. Given a chance that, yeah, given a chance that many in China would not have been given under normal circumstances. Right? No, there was a guy, right? There was a guy close to our hearts, right? Close to our hearts that many people don't speak about. Um, but I am going to speak about it. That who was very young when he took over his country, right? He was a December born on Christmas Day. Right? This guy right here, this guy. Now, many persons in Barbados could remember in 1990, the leader into the 1991 general election, where we would have had Sir Lord Erskine Sandyford as the leader of the country, prime minister, and a young David Thompson. Hey, the young David John Howard Thompson, representing the good parish and the good people of St. John, something that I will do, Nigel, represent the good people of St. John in the very near future. A young David Thompson, Nigel, 1991, leader in 1991 was afforded an opportunity. And this is what I spoke about, a fusion of youth and seniors, a fusion of youth, unity between the youth and seniors is vital to the survival of any institution or system. So you're not gonna get that longevity if you go at it with all youth, right? Because they need the wisdom to be able to guide. The youth definitely need um that sounding box, validation, somebody to help, not necessarily to tell them what to do, but to churn the new way out of them. I help to keep it structured or focused in the historical ideals that were good for us as people and good for us as a country. Now, it took David John Howard Thompson, Nigel, from 1991 all up to 2008, right? All up to 2008. Right? So that's basically three general elections. General election in 1991, then he
That's
had,
seven, that's 17 years, man. 17 years before he actually sat or got the opportunity to be the prime minister. So,
yeah,
so just to clarify what you're saying that in ideal circumstances, there should be, based on everything that we're seeing, all the different countries we looked at, where there was a succession plan. Someone was, some light was seen in some young person,
yeah,
and an elder statesman or the governing bodies realized and said, well, hey, if all else failed, we have someone who we have been nurturing, who we have been developing to take this role. And more often than not, those situations last longer than uh, I would say independence. Is that what you were saying? Is that the standard that we are seeing, the pattern?
yeah. Well, this is how it is interpreted, right? No, you should aspire to seek guidance from the seniors, right? However, we can't act like all the seniors are saints. We can't act like the seniors know it all. And we can't act like the seniors brought us into the land of milk and honey, because if they did, the country would not be in the state that it's in right now.
Oh,
Hands down.
don't say so,
Right?
man. They can get vexed with you. Don't say so.
No, I'm telling the truth. Telling the truth. Right? If they
Hmm.
had it all together, we would not be in this state right now. So even the seniors need assistance. Even the seniors need help. Right? They worked, they toiled, they did what they had to do, they paid the taxes, they tried to contribute. But the seniors can give you stories, Nigel. Right? Even the ones who made it versus the ones who did not make it. All two sides can give you stories about the challenges they faced, about the lack of support they had, and if they had the right support, what they could have achieved in life. Right? Nigel, us young people, we weren't born snobs. We weren't born dishonest. We weren't born corrupt. We weren't born thieving. We weren't born with a lack of integrity, right? We weren't born, right? We weren't born knowing about. We were taught all of these things by seniors, right?
But how we could be teach all these things when they tell we Kemar, do as I say and not as I do. How we could do anything else if we following what them say? I being funny here, of course. If being funny here.
Yeah, yeah. So here's madness, no Nigel. Here's madness running in a circle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here's madness not running in a circle, right? Because there's a narrative going around in Barbados, right? There's a narrative going around in Barbados, right? About old guard, or what you consider to be old guard. Not just Barbados, but America, because we saw it with Biden, where persons were forcing Biden to step down and to put in Kamala because he was, they say he was a little bit aged, they say he was all these things, and Biden crumbled to the pressure and stepped down to allow a much younger Kamala to lead the Democratic Party. I mean, she got lashes, but it was made, and that was a move not successful, right? And Trump, a fairly aged and senior person, ended up beating out the so-called generational transition, right? Donald Trump. So it didn't work in every sense, right? And there will always be times where it does not necessarily work. But we like to talk about old guard, right? But since it has been a narrative sown on one particular institution in Barbados, right? I want to say categorically that the politicians that we have now in Barbados, all of them have to be considered old guard, not just one side and not the next. And I would give reasons for saying that, Nigel, right? No, I would like to produce the facts, right? So we could start looking at the current crop of politicians right now in Barbados, particularly those ones in the government, because I think the public already spoke to the ones that lost. But if you look at the ones in the government, if you look at the ages, right? If you look at the ages of these persons, they are just as old or older than some of the persons people are considering to be old guard. So if you want to get rid of the old guard from politics, you got to get rid of all the politicians that over a certain age, either BLP or DLP. It can be an unfair scenario where you're saying to one side, well, don't bring back these people or don't bring back these persons because they're old guard. But then if you look in the parliament, let me get practical, Nigel. Let me get practical, right? Let's get practical with our analysis, right? Let's look at the Attorney General of Barbados, right? Dale Marshall. Attorney General Dale Marshall. Now he was in politics before, Nigel, right? He was a sitting member of Parliament from when Afro was the Prime Minister. He won his seat. Now he's back again, and he's back again, still there, right? He was born in 1963, Nigel, right? 1963. Let me get it on the screen here for everybody to see because, yeah, truth telling is what we on in Barbados, not narrative pushing. You see here clearly, right?
Yeah, we good to go.
Okay, he was born in 1963. You consider this to be young, Nigel?
62 years old for a man relatively is young, but in politics, those are the common ages that we see in politics. That is what we look at when we see a politician. We don't imagine or think about a young person. Furthermore, think about anybody in their 30s. let alone 40s. You might catch some in 40s, but when we think about politicians, especially in the islands, we think about mature grown men, 50 plus, 60 plus, some in the 70s. So no, I would
Mhm.
not consider. I would not consider
Right, right. Remember my motivation. I am not knocking. I am not knocking. Remember, seniors. Remember, I believe as long as you have, right, as long as you have the temerity to go, as long as you have the temerity to go, you're still intellectually sound, you could stay. But we're looking at
for sure.
this narrative pushing of people who they consider to be old guard, right?
Hmm.
Older people, right? Remember, our fight is not to save only the young. We want both. We want because you
Absolutely.
can have somebody who's fresh in politics that comes in at 62 years old or 60 years old and do a good 10, 15 year, and that'll be the best 10, 15 year you ever got in your life, right? So that is him, right? Okay, let's get past him now. Let's look at, you don't want partial. William Dugate, right? William Dugate, he's a minister of parliament, Samuel Marshall, and he was born in 1967, right?
Hmm.
1967.
Like late 50s. Yeah. So the average age for the politicians in Barbados has to be somewhere between 50 and 65.
Yeah,
The average
yeah.
age. Average.
1967, right? Um, so let us pass him, right? Let's go past him. Let's look at Cynthia Ford, right? Sitting member of parliament. Let's look at Cynthia Ford. 1952, she was born, right? 1952, she was born, right? Now, let me look at who I perceive to be the youngest member of parliament that we have, right? I say perceive because assuming, and that person should be Marshall. Can't left and wrong somebody. He send it in and let me know who's the youngest member of parliament that we have today in Barbados, right? Who's the youngest member of parliament that we have in Barbados? Now, it doesn't give in her biography, particularly when she was born, but I assume that Miss Cattle is in her 40s, right, Nigel? In her 40s. And I believe somebody else who is young would be the representative David Son Ishmael. So let's try him out. Sorry for carrying through a whole politics class, Nigel.
No, 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 all good. But before, as you do that, let me ask you a question. Now, what we're saying, we're seeing a pattern of ages. We're seeing, well, this is what we see. This is what is typical. Now, it is typical, and it is also showing us that we have a small set of perspectives on a very big issue, like issues that
Yeah.
address an island. A very small mindset of people who make those decisions. No, is it that the youth isn't interested in politics? Is it that there's no space for the youth, or the is it just that there's no, as we spoken about from the top of this topic, there's no succession planning? Which has to come first, the interest from the youth or a proper succession plan created by those in those positions now, the older statesmen or the old guard, as we are referring to them? What is that perfect balance that we're looking for, and then what is it presently that has caused it to look the way that it looks?
Well, here's my perspective on it, Nigel. I too notice the trend, right? But you often hear me mostly speak about that age gap, right? That age gap in politics. Um, youth are interested in politics. I'm young. I'm interested, right? When I look across the political landscape, I could call a couple of young persons. It doesn't matter the party, but you could clearly see that there's a level of interest, right? So I just trying out a name, just trying out names, right? Just trying out names, but I could call persons like Kemar Safri, right? Who is involved with the homeless, right? And he's never he's never hidden his temerity for politics. But if I got on in there and calling, he would take. But the point is, historically, Nigel, political parties tend to structure themselves in different blocks and groups and ages. So you will have a couple of persons from in the you say 70s, persons in 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, even 20s, right? Mia Motley, Prime Minister, she entered politics in her 20s, right? In her 20s. David Thompson, he also entered politics in his 20s, and he was afforded the opportunity to, go on and represent in the House and do these things. So, again, I heard the Prime Minister saying more than once that she needs to fill the age gap. She needs to fill the age gap, right? She needs to fill the age gap in terms of representation for Parliament, right? Representation for Parliament. So she's going off to do her thing, and she says maybe she needs to get representatives of a particular age who could directly, right? You could directly deal with youth-related issues per se, right? To deal with specific things akin to the youth. Let's say, if you look over in Namibia, right? I'm gonna put if you look over in Namibia, people are not focusing in on the Namibia president, but Namibia has a young politician, right? Her name is Patience Mansour, right? I'm gonna pull her up, right? I'm gonna pull her up here for everybody to see. So you can see Patience, young Patience. Oh, right. Trying to share my screen quickly. Right. But she was born in 1999, Nigel, very young girl, and she's now a sitting member of the Namibia House. Right. She's a sitting member, born in again 1999. Right. Patience Mansour. So I am saying to you, historically, these things have been done before to ensure the survival of historical institutions, right? So you have to get the young people in and motivate them in a way that the elders can then, as they go on into retirement, then seek to pass on the generational knowledge to ensure that the institutions that can then survive for the long haul. So what happens when you do not, Nigel, set up these scenarios to ensure longevity? You end up with top-heavy institutions where the average age of your institution is nearby 50, 60, right? And you have the youth not interested in participating because they don't see much room for themselves in the future in these environments that are dominated, right? They are dominated by people that are up the age. So I am saying really and truly, because don't want to get distracted here, but I have to address it. But seeing any comments, people trying to skew this conversation about ageism. So let me pour cold water on all of that right now, right? when I say hot, me pour some hot water on it and scorch it to the earth before it takes root. And people send off alternate views to be that about ageism and knocking people that are old. We repeated on this show Nigel countless times, many times, that we are for cross generational leadership, right? And we repeated constantly that we believe in a synergy between elders and youth, right? However, when you run into scenarios, Nigel, when you find that historical institutions, and we give a whole list, but because I am steeping, while I'm steeping, I use the political institutions as basically that is the deepest knowledge I have when it comes to the functioning of these institutions. So we use that, right? But I also spoke about the church, right? I also spoke about the unions. I also spoke about other historical institutions, right? So all came on alternate views looking for a narrative to run off with tonight. Sorry, but you're not having it. Right? Sorry, you're not having it. So whoever plotted, whoever in the comments, whoever sent whoever over alternate views, let me just say that although we discuss politics, alternate views will always be an political show, right? An political show. And this show does not push or support any political, and this platform does not push the ideas or the ideals of any political party. This is a platform about the people of Barbados, of the Caribbean, and of the wider world. Let that be our focus, right? And to take the information in the spirit that it is given. Because these are the things that hold on Barbados. I'm a young person, I'm expressing my truth, right? And they will not be held back by the opinions of a few. Traore was not held back, right? These people were not held back. So I am saying, Nigel, on alternate views, right, that this is not the time to pacify, Nigel. This is not the time to pacify egos, right? This is not a time to pacify egos because basically Barbados is burning a slow death. The region is burning a slow death. The wider world is burning a slow death. And if the youth, right, and I keep saying youth, the youthful energy, the youth at heart, the youth at mind, right, adopt the posture that's being recommended by some persons, I would call stakeholders, this country will never get anywhere under those old adages, We spoke about the colonial mindset. You really got to shackle off the colonial mindset. Like, information is so fluid nowadays, Nigel. Tap of a finger. Look how we were able to pull up all of that information at the click of a finger to show the world what we are saying. So I will make this last point, and then we're going to, make a final wrapping up comment, and then the event Nigel on the site to hear some alternate views from the viewers. Every single institution nowadays, I am hearing the young people are not interested. The young people lost their way. The young people following Vibes Cartel. The young people ain't interested in politics and political parties. Young people ain't interested in the unions. Everything is a bashing session on the young people. We have so many shootings every day, right? Murders, crime rampant in society, and everything is some negative story, some negative bashing about the youth and the young people of Barbados. But nobody is saying, well, it is our fault that we allow this horse to bolt the way it has bolted. With these young children didn't raise themselves. We raised them. And if we raise them, they are indeed a product of society. They are indeed a product of us, the senior people, and the onus is on us to go there and rescue them and to help change those negative trajectories, Nigel, onto a more positive trajectory. Right? So don't come to Kemar Stuart telling Kemar Stuart about pacification for you. Don't come and tell Kemar Stuart about or if you tell Kemar about or, Kemar can tell you about P. LMNOP. Right, Nigel?
No, for sure. You're talking word sound. You're talking truth to power. There's an acronym for the word blame because looking at myself isn't easy. No, there's no reason why us addressing the reality that these institutions are predominantly and historically ran by older people. That is the truth. That is nothing to do with we don't think, or people could do this, or people of a certain age can do that. Absolutely not. And as you said, we believe in multi-generational leadership, multi-generational mentorship. It cannot work no other way. And for it to work, there must be a level of authenticity. There must be a level of transparency that exists between the two. Because if I can't hold you accountable, that means you could do whatever you want. So it must be a handshake. It can't be one-sided nothing. It's a handshake between the elders who are due their just due, who are due their respect. But there's also the youth who will be in position that they're in because every man has his time. Nobody don't know when they're going. You understand? And again, what we talk about from the top of the conversation was proper succession planning. So making a proper analysis of what we have presently and what we can do, what we think about doing, all the ideas that we can pull together in order to move forward together in unity. It
Yeah.
requires another level of intellectual understanding, intellectual depth, which we want to inspire and definitely nurture here on Alternative Views because we're what Kemar lifelong learners, correct?
Slow learners. Yeah.
You know what I'm
So
saying?
Nigel, everybody wants the youth. Everybody wants to claim the young people. Everybody wants to bring in a young person and show them the way. But sorry to burst the bubble, the old way didn't work for y'all, and it more than likely will not work for us. And that's not a lack of respect. That's not a lack of acknowledgement. That's not a lack of that's not rebellion. It's just straight truth, right? It's just the straight truth. No, we can sit down and we can ascertain, right? We can sit down and we can try to ascertain um what we think the people want, right? What we think they want, right? No, you find that youth are the ones who are caught up in this crime wave in Barbados, right? You know, at no point in time did I see anybody really going and asking the youth what the youth want, right? Nobody really asking the youth what the youth want. Everybody asking all types of people all around the youth, what do you think we need to do for the youth, right? What do you think we need to do for the young people to help the young people? All they're hearing is bring back church, ban vibes cartel, shoot them down, lock them up, bring back hanging. That's all I'm hearing, right? That's all I'm hearing, right? So I am saying this categorically, right? Without fear or favor, right? Without fear or favor. If we do not reverse the negative trends, Nigel, right? The negative trends that are associated Nigel, right? With the historical way of doing things, right? The country can basically come to a grinding halt. Immigration, people are going to come into the country, take over all of the key resources. They're going to breed Nigel. They're going to get children and then those children will get more and more children because they're going to breed at a faster rate than the local population. And then when the country fully becomes consolidated in the hands of persons who immigrated into the country, then we can cry long tears and say that the government set up the country, which they did. But the point is, Nigel, strategically, there needs to be better guidance. No, a young mind, Nigel, will need to be nurtured. You know, you don't know everything. You need guidance. You need clarity. You need people, senior people who can see much further than you as a young person. That is a necessity, right? But since we like so much beating up on the young people, right? Like since we like so much beating up on the young people because we have this thing with exploitation going on in our nature. How many young people say they want to get a job, but some supervisor or some manager or somebody want a sexual favor for that job? How many young people went to school, got the degrees, everything, and have to start at a starting level position doing the same work as somebody who don't even have a CXE in the name, right? How many times they have invited young people into a space to continue to push all narratives, right? Continue to push all narratives, and if not accepted, or the youth rebellion, or the youth this, or the youth that, all of those things. So I am saying you have historically had people continue to sexually abuse, rob, intellectual theft, continue to take take the youth and take the essence from the young in this country, and it manifests, Nigel, to such an anger, Nigel, that everything you see going on with the young people right now has been happening before, and now it is coming up in public for all and sundry to see what was done behind closed doors, right? Because a lot of seniors in this country have a lot to answer for in Barbados when it comes to the young people, right? So I will wrap up on saying this one, Nigel. What's done in the dark has to come to the light, right? And what we're seeing now is the light, right? What we're seeing now is the light, and the negative light emanating from not all, right? Not all, but some of the youth. You know when we're gonna fully acknowledge that we're in a crisis, Nigel? This is when the more, I would say, pristine, but the more educated, the more upper crust high society, I would say the more well-to-do, right? The more well-to-do people in society, when they become seriously impacted and not the lower echelon people as well we're seeing right now, then we're going to want to acknowledge that we are fully in crisis. And I, as a young person, Nigel, went through hell in politics, still going through hell up to today, right? Still going through hell up to today. I can assure you that I can amalgamate young people and put them on a platform and let them tell you about the abuse and the pressure and the crass behavior that we experience from elders in society. And then we have to stand up for ourselves as young people, like what they told us to do. Speak up for yourself, stand up for yourself. Don't let nobody unfair you. Don't let nobody run you over. If you have something to say. And as soon as they say rude and disrespectful.
But you forget Kemar, to tell us do as we say it and not as we do. But the trick about that, children has never been good at listening to what they heard, but they've always been excellent, extremely great at doing what they see.
Mm.
Nothing more to say on that topic, but this was a
Yeah.
very boisterous conversation, and I am happy to see the comments engaging with us. Again, this is nothing about ageism. This is nothing about who better than who. We all need each other. Every man Jack Gorby at the table saying no with something to offer. However, we got to be offering in the spirit of truth, the spirit of transparency. Because only then, calling back to the journey, I got
Journey.
my copy here. The journey, it is only with authenticity and a level of honesty that we can actually improve because we're now dealing with reality, tangible reality. What was true yesterday, what was true today, what will be true tomorrow. Those are what we are choosing to work on. Everything else is illusion. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. So on alternate views, this is the energy and the spirit that we are moving with and speaking with. Spirit of truth.
Right.
You've got some fire coming to them too. Don't get twisted. But everybody's get the turn. Everybody's get the turn. And it's a top down and say, oh, so we got a deal from the top, then we can come down to the bottom. Because there is some type of hierarchy that needs to be adhered to. There is a type of structure that is necessary in order to nurture and grow. That needs to be addressed to the youth also. But you've taken real licks right now. You understand? So we can stand up and speak truth to power for you, for that is us. That is us reflecting. You understand? So thank you for
Yeah.
the space. Alternate views every Thursday. Every Thursday we can be here.
Yeah.
Every Thursday
So,
we can be here.
yeah. So hear it for what it is. Take it for what it is. Don't take it past what it is, and accept it for what it is. Right? I am nice. I can speak. I am nice, so I can use this because you know I can speak. But how about the youth that are going to take up a gun to speak so that you could hear what he has to say via the gun or via the knife? Right? We speak about those low level crimes. But when you go up in society, the educated, we've never had dunce running the country, or we've never had dunce leading organizations. If you make it the top of organization, you're intelligent, you're smart, you're brilliant, and you're able to lead it. There is a level of brilliance and importance within you if you make it that far. Right? So all I'm saying is when you do reach these spaces, it's not just to look good, Nigel, look the part, dress nice, but your thinking when you're in those spaces will help to either transform, Nigel, or destroy. So to wrap up tonight's session, I want to end with a quote. It's called thinking. So when leading nations, Nigel, organizations, having relationships on a personal level, on a national level, there's a thinking that all children are supposed to be self-centered, and this is because they have not developed enough to become independent of their parents to be able to care for themselves. On the same token, when the princes and princesses of a nation are childish, they are self-centered and produce the following symptoms. One, they think that the country exists to serve their influence and not the other way around. Two, they think self-interest and not national interest. They negotiate against the national interest because they are blinded by their own personal needs. Right? Dependency. Children by nature are dependent. So a childish national leadership or childish leadership will produce dependent economies and societies that will become the pawns of bigger nations in the world. Right? And we could speak to it on a practical individual level. When your child is so dependent on you to think for them, right? It's very easy for your child to enter into an environment to become the pawn of somebody else to be able to do their bidding. And we're seeing a lot of that right now because we know that a lot of these young people can't afford to bring in guns, but they still have guns in the shooting. So they are pawns in a bigger scenario, right? And they become vulnerable to these larger states as investors look at them as sacrificial lambs or basically a temporary asset to use and discard. So dependent on childish political and civil leadership, take pride in always begging their parent nations for help. What is sad is that some of these nations have never grown, and after 50 years of political independence, they are still kindergarten in nature and in the sense of it. And children are dependent nature because they have not yet cultivated their gifts, harness their potential, and develop their minds to become financially independent of parents and contribute to the wider family. This process that children go through from dependence to independence to interdependence reflect the stages that countries, organizations, and otherwise go through on their way to dignity. However, just as children, there are abnormal conditions that cause certain children not to develop and stay at home with their parents. And so shall it be with nations and organizations who choose not to address this problem. End quote. So we're up at a quarter to the hour. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to host Mr. Juke and Joshua next week as they were unable to make it due to the arrangements they had. They would have communicated it to me, so I'm communicating it to you. So we look forward to hearing these guys at another date, but they were both unable to make it out of their respective duties as election is definitely happening on the ground. But with that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in to this program. I welcome you all to Alternate Views. I had a very passionate outpouring tonight, right? I had a passionate outpouring tonight. And that was due to the fact that we cannot hold back anymore, Nigel. Right? Someone use the word conditions, so I'm going to use that word. The conditions right now exist for people. I say multi-generational. Even the ones who are big adults but never got the opportunity to realize their dreams, never got the opportunity to speak out. I mean, big adults look at me and say, I am happy for you and I'm proud of you because I don't have the courage to speak out like you. So I am sending encouragement to the big adults. I am sending more power to the big adults. Nobody can do you anything. Speak out if you have to speak out. Public servant, speak out if you have to speak out. The fear of losing your income and job is there. Right? But the youth now are emerging to show you that you can speak out and be respected. Right? You can speak out and be respected. And nobody has to filter or control your opinion like you think. Right? So if you want to continue to go to work, you don't want to ask the boss for a raise, and you know you deserve that raise, well, you will work for less pay. Right? If you know there are certain benefits you want at work and you don't present yourself, studying to show yourself approve and other things, well, you just won't get it.
Amen.
Right? If Kemar short sits back and says, man, listen, you ain't gonna get it. If Nigel sits back and says, man, you will still be in Barbados. So I am saying to all and sundry, since the word youth tends to be a problem, all and sundry, right? I am raining the good word down on everybody tonight, multi-generational, that the world is our oyster, I have some of the best seniors supporting me, and I would never insult them in any type of way, fashion. I would never speak about ageism. Anybody knows me knows I spend majority of my time with the elders and seniors, and I'm basically saying it to you verbatim how the elders said it to me. The youth need to step forward and be encouraged to step forward, right? So keep the negativity at the minimum, focus on the positivity, receive the message from the messengers, not just meaning me and Nigel, but read the comments as well and see the feedback coming from the people, right? See the feedback coming from the people. So if you're offended by the truth, well, you have a lot of personal growing to do because Barbados, I mean, we had a serious fight, Nigel, where we had to fight to maintain the voice of the people. Think about Nigel, a government brought what we call cybercrime legislation to shut the mouths of an entire population, right? Control social media. If you post anything of certain natures, fines of $100,000, 7 years in jail, right? Any person who's willing to say the Kemar short, you should stop what you're doing. You should do this and you should do that and you should allow this, but and you should do that and this is the thing. Well, let me just say it to you. Think about life in Barbados under a cybercrime bill and ask yourself if that is what you want, and ask yourself if that is the future society where you don't even have freedom of speech, where you don't even have freedom of fingers, Nigel, to take what you want and post it without the government or the state flying down to crash and take away from the young people of this country, right? Take away from the young people of this country the very tool that has allowed, I would say, almost the ultimate expression. Our youth, right? Our youth, Nigel. Let me not say our youth. Our elders, our seniors, enjoy the most free time on earth, Nigel, right? When it came to free speech, right? They enjoyed it. And now that same free speech is being taken away by some of the same elders in parliament, right? But you're saying to the youth, smile a while and give your face a rest. You know, be happy, accept that, and you'll be married. But yeah,
Mm.
thank you, everybody. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you were saying something.
No, no, man. You give a very powerful address, very, very powerful address, and it's due. It is due. Pedro is saying truth is like a raging lion. It can defend itself. And if truth is what you're speaking, you don't need to worry. You don't have to have any worries. I would send a message to the youth. Stand up and speak truth to power. Be who you are. Allow what is inside you, the light that is inside you, to come forth. Don't be dismayed by the immediate external of what you're saying. There's a lot of fear mongering going on. And the more fear to push, the more collectively everybody is going to be in fear. And that's no good for anyone. Right now, it's requiring that courage to really stand up and put truth to power. And Kemar, I commend you as one of those voices for the youth in Barbados on the ground, standing strong, 10 toes down. A lot of people will not be able to withstand the social pressures that come with standing up and speaking like that. But the more naysayers you have, the more ones you can hear saying, listen, man, I ain't gonna say it too low, but listen, keep saying so, keep saying so. You hear those conversations, you hear those comments more often than not, meaning that there's people that are willing to support you and are supporting you. Somebody's always watching, so make sure when to watch you putting on a good show. And the truthful show is the best show. The most realistic show is the best show. So
Yeah.
again, we spoke a little heavy today, and it's supposed to be heavy. Reality has some weight to it. Truth has some weight to it because it got substance. We could get and talk, gaff, ha ha, kiki. Those are very light things, and those are necessary too. We can't spend all the days in the debt, but the more we encourage this conversation, the more we get familiar with this conversation, the easier it will become. The more clear the road will open up that will show us the way that we're supposed to go. So to the youth, stand up, be yourself, self-reliant, self-determination, self-perseverance. And so I really believe in yourself. There's only one you in this world, you know. Out of the billions of the people, there's one Kemar Stuart. There's one Nigel Franklyn. That in itself is something to marvel. You understand? But in the fullness of time, again, thank you, alternate viewers. It has been a pleasure. Kemar Stuart, always a pleasure joining you here on all these Thursdays to discuss the light and heavy, the indifferent and the different. You know, we got love for everybody, the young, the old, and the in between. We need everybody. We need everybody at the table. No, those are my ending comments, man.
Yes, sir. So I agree with you, Nigel. We need everybody on board, the youth, the in between, everybody, right? And once we stick along the line of truthfulness, on being not being, disrespect is not a thing, talking down is not a thing, but we're just dealing with it as is. And if when hypocrisy is a big thing in Barbados, right? Is a big thing in Barbados where we tend to pacify as opposed to dealing with the scenario up front and moving on to achieve the better results, sir. So with that powerful word, my bro, I want to end with a last quote from the Living Bible to end off this show. Hey, to end off this show and to wrap up. Right, Mr. Juke, I said good night to everybody, but the growing, it hasn't caught up. But he apologizes and he will be here, at the right time to give you the full perspective on. Yeah. So I am in Genesis, Nigel. It seems like 32 is my lucky number. I don't know what is that, but yeah, we're at Genesis 32. So that to wrap up alternate views, it says, so Jacob and his household started on again, and the angels of God came to meet him. When he saw them, he exclaimed, God lives here. So he named the place God's territory. Jacob sent messengers to his brother Esau with a message. Hello from Jacob. I've been living with Laban until recently. Now I own oxen, donkey, sheep, and many servants, both men and women. I have sent these messengers to inform you of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to us. These messengers returned with the news that Esau was on the way to meet Jacob with an army of 400 men, and Jacob was frantic with fear. He divided his household along with the flock and herd and camel into two groups, for he said, if Esau attacks one group, perhaps the others can escape. Then Jacob prayed, O God, Abraham my father, for my father Isaac, O Jehovah, who told me to return to the land of my relatives, say that you would do me good. I am not worthy of the least of all your loving kindness shown to me again and again, just as you promised me. But when I left home, I owned nothing except walking with a stick. And now I am two armies, Nigel. Oh Lord, please deliver me from the destruction at the hand of my brother Esau, for I am frightened, terribly afraid that he's coming to kill me along the way. But you promised to do me good and to multiply my descendants until they become as sands along the shores, Nigel. Too many to count. So, with that being said, I hope that last thing quote goes out there to the multi-generational leaders that we need in this country to don't mind the evil energy and the bad energy, but to multiply. And as Connett said, at least change one mind a day. Change one mind a day. And that is the start that we need. Right? That is the start that we need. So, my people, thank you very much. Square 4, Mr. Angel, Fabian Yard, everybody from St. John, St. George, St. Philip, St. Lucie, the city, all parishes in Barbados, not just Barbadians all over the diaspora, all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah, Joseph, Jediah, Tyrone, Elizabeth, Pedro, Anthony Oliver, um, Vihoy, who had an alternate opinion to some of what we were saying, but that is what the show is all about, alternate
Mhm.
opinions. Um, again, Mr. Angel, Veronica Braffet. Um, yeah,
Got
thank you guys.
Elizabeth Knight, shout out Elizabeth Knight.
Yeah, yeah,
Good to see you on the show.
yeah. Thank you to everybody. We are about to sign off. We're up at 10 p.m. Yeah, another Thursday. We look forward to seeing you guys. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. So look out for the posting. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe. Because this is alternative views and we're not keeping with the traditional narrative. Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Have a good weekend, everybody. Be safe. You know, keep positive. We will see you again next Thursday. Alternate views.
yeah, yeah, yeah.